there are a lot of larger companies that have a huge footprint here, and it's going to make more and more sense for them. And that's coming. It really is. It's a journey. It's a journey for, and I think 5 years is a pretty good bar. Let's look at this in 5 years, and we might probably have 10 times as many users as we have today or more, maybe 20.
Welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. This week I have Harold Wortman, who is Senior Product Manager at Verizon, who is responsible for Teams Phone Mobile. He's been right through the whole Teams Phone Mobile project with Verizon, and we talk about the whole project, how Teams Phone Mobile integrates into operators, some of the features, some of the unique features that Verizon have added to Teams Phone Mobile. And it's a really great deep dive into Teams Phone Mobile, the use cases, and his thoughts on the future of Teams Phone Mobile as well. Thanks very much to Harold for taking the time to join the pod, and also many thanks to Ribbon, who are the sponsors of this podcast. Really appreciate their support of everything we're doing with Empowering Cloud. And with that, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Excited to get into this one. I had an awesome conversation with Harold a few weeks ago, and about half an hour into our chat, I was like, oh, we should have recorded this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into Teams Phone Mobile. Harold, do you just want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Harold Wortman. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Verizon, and I manage the Teams Phone Mobile project at Verizon. The product is called Verizon Mobile for Microsoft Teams. We kind of try to make it complicated, so we have our own brand. But
everyone has their own brand,
yes,
and it's always the way, isn't it?
Absolutely. So good to be here. Thanks,
awesome.
Tom.
Yeah, no. So you've been right through the entire journey from kind of theoretical project through to deployment. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. So it's been about 3 years for us since we got started. Pretty close to right at 3 years. So it was really about 18 months, maybe. Well, it was faster than that. Once we start developing and testing, we got it out pretty quickly in roughly 9 months. But we had we had some pre-tests and proofs of concept, so to speak, and things of that 9 months prior to that. So it's been an 18-month in the market, an 18-month product development journey.
Awesome. So I really want to get into where it is today and your thoughts on it and everything else. But let's start at the start of the journey, kind of when it was, I guess Microsoft were probably shopping around the option to a few different operators. What was the thinking at that time in terms of where it fit in your portfolio and the opportunity?
Well, absolutely. So it made a lot of sense because Microsoft cloud adoption from the phone standpoint obviously has gone off the charts. Especially since the pandemic, it kind of, it definitely accelerated the adoption, and into Microsoft especially, I think they had a sweet spot of saying, hey, we've got the software, it's ready, you just got to light it up. And a lot of businesses chose to do that. And so, and continue to do that. It just makes sense. They have a lot of other services, and to have the everything in-house from that perspective is attractive. So from a customer base perspective, Microsoft was sitting there growing, expanding, and they're pretty new, as we know from the Skype world, and then going into, trying to expand that and bringing it into this phone product and the phone system into Teams. It's been a journey for Microsoft, but I feel like, after 5 or 6 years, they kind of got their claws into it, and it started taking off. From our standpoint, a mobile, we are primarily a mobile company. Now, we still get a lot of revenue from our wireline services, of course, globally, but most of our revenue, 80%, is mobile. So it made sense for us to say, hey, this is where the market's going. The trends are this way. This is a win-win. And whenever there's a big win-win like that, it's pretty easy to craft a plan around it. So it accelerated pretty quickly after that point.
Awesome. And this is both a non-trivial investment and a non-trivial kind of technical thing. I think people don't understand, and maybe you can give us some idea of how, because it's quite a tight integration, how much their work is to do between Microsoft and an operator.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge integration because this is the first integration with a third party into our wireless network, into our into the networking and routing components of our wireless network. So you're getting into the brains, so to speak, of the wireless world, and it's very different than a SIP trunking connection. It's just a lot more complex. There's a lot to it. And everything is there for a reason, and you have to test every component to make sure it's all functioning the way we expect and providing the services from a wireless standpoint that we're used to providing within Verizon. So it definitely has been a large effort from that standpoint, and some significant investment on the Verizon side and on the Microsoft side. We both kind of split that to make sure that we were doing it the right way. So we've each got a stake in it, and we feel good about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like from a kind of outside perspective, I've worked with telcos for a long time, not so much with mobile providers, but like telco just takes a lot of time, and there's both some legacy to that, and there's some good reason to that, the dependency in the service. But I think a lot of people, when Teams Phone Mobile was launched, they expected it to come to market a lot quicker than it actually did, even inside of Microsoft, because Microsoft used to think about its software.
Yeah,
they think faster than operator thinks.
Yeah,
in some ways.
Absolutely. And the mobile world is very different. The networks are a lot more complicated. SIP trunking, people, for a large part, we've got to figure it out. There's a lot of that out there, a lot of different networks out there. The technology's, it's stable and it's mature, and we have a lot of security and a lot of things around it. This is a very new integration, direct. So your Teams number is your cell number. It truly is the same number. We are processing it through our mobile network. So there's a lot there. That we had to get through and test. And we learned in the first, 18 months of our product journey, what we were missing, and we made adjustments. We can talk through some of that stuff too, if you want to. But
yeah, I'd love to get into that, because you've done some really cool stuff, the Apple Watch stuff and other bits and pieces. So how that would be a great place to start, actually. Kind of, where was it at V1 and kind of what came along the way?
Absolutely. So our goal getting out of the market was to have a stable product, first of all, and that served the very basic use case, which was, hey, we want it to be really easy to turn on, and we want the end user, the customer, to have the ability to turn it on and off on demand. So we accomplished that. It's a feature. It's set up just as a feature you can add to any voice plan. So it's really easy to turn on. You just have to associate your tenant in our self-service tools, and it's really easy to turn off. It's a feature. You just turn it off, and we pull the number out of the tenant. So it's all API driven from that standpoint, and we're leveraging those Operator Connect APIs that have been there for some years that Microsoft kind of transitioned for mobile. So that's been, that's kind of where we started. Make it easy, make it simple, be able to add a feature. Make sure it works. Make sure it works like we originally expected. And for a large part, it did, but we found problems, right? We found things that, from a user perspective, of course, when you launch something new, that you didn't expect, you didn't think about, and other things that definitely we planned on improving as we went along. So we've kind of plugged a lot of the holes, some of the features. What's interesting about this product, really interesting, is that you get a lot of features on your wireless account by default. And this product, you don't want to. We had to think very carefully. What features do we want to keep on the wireless side within our intelligence in our network, and what features do we want to add to and just let Microsoft handle as part of the PBX? So they're the PBX. So we took a guess at that going, when we launched, and we did some testing, but still we didn't, took some time for us to realize, okay, we got to rebalance this a little bit and add more features into our network to make sure you're getting the experience that you're expecting from a wireless provider still. Not just dial tone, but you're still getting the capabilities that you expect. So
what's an example of that, like a feature that Verizon bring to that party?
A lot of the mid-call features are examples of that. So from a usability perspective, you expect to be able to do, when I say mid-call features, I'm talking about three-way calling or even something as simple as call waiting. Call waiting, three-way calling, transferring a call. You expect to be able to do that from the native dialer if you want to. And some of our original assumptions going in were, hey, they can go and they can do all of this through the Teams app on the phone.
Yeah, and that's the Microsoft typical marketing pitch, right? Isn't it? You escalate to the Teams app, and then you take control and do your, because you can visualize it and everything else.
Yep.
But it sounds like, and it makes sense that some of your customers, particularly if they're used to those capabilities and they know their DCF tones and things,
and why would you?
I've always been able to do this.
Yeah, why would you want to have to transfer the call into your Teams app, open your Teams app, transfer the call, then do the function? It of course didn't make a lot of sense. So we went back through and we picked out some of those key features, 4, 5, 6 of them, and we pulled them back and said now they're offered on both sides. So you got them on the native dialer, or you've got them, of course, in the Microsoft PBX. That was a bit of learning, of course, that we had that was really quick in the first few months. But then, other things come up. You mentioned, the Apple Watch aspect. We have something called Number Share that enables that Apple Watch in our network. And so we quickly found a lot of executives have Apple Watches and they want to use their Apple Watch. And does this work with their Apple Watch? Well, if not, then call us back when it works. So we went through and we tested that and got it to work and made adjustments and called it back. So it's good. And a lot of those customers are now retesting it and getting it back into their program because they're interested. Yeah. They just they want some customers just want specific features. That's super useful to understand as well, because of people listening to this podcast, there are different operators in different regions, and from a Microsoft point of view, it will be presented as more or less the same thing but in different regions. But I'm guessing there's going to be difference between operators and how they handle those scenarios. And now we're going to hit a period of time where there'll be competitive operators in the same markets. Those differentiations are going to start to matter a little bit more, I think. Absolutely. So, one of the things we've talked with Microsoft about is, are you tracking any of this? Microsoft, do you know who offers what and how the special things? Because we as Verizon have done a bunch of things to enhance our network, from a learning perspective and customer perspective, that we absolutely feel confident other providers have not done in the same way or done at all. I'm sure there
sounds like you're setting me some homework, Harold, to do a research comparison.
Well, I would like that. I would like to know too. If you want to go to those 6 or 8 providers and do a list, somebody from a customer perspective, when I talk to customers that are global and they're interested, and we have some that, hey, they're going first in Germany and Italy and or England, and they're rolling out there and they're having to do individual pilots with every operator because it just works differently. Yeah. So it is a different product per operator, even though the program from a Microsoft perspective says Teams Phone Mobile. It's not the same when you get every operator. Now, the basic dial tone should be through that. It's going to be through that operator, right? But then how it works.
Yeah. And the Teams side is going to be the same because it's side, Teams, very similar, but it's where you get to all those, like you say, mid-call features and Apple Watch and other capabilities. Yeah. And also commercially, people are treating it differently as well. So there's that.
Absolutely. And then we, other and really important things that we figured out, how do we connect to users? So when you get Teams Phone Mobile, let's say you've got users in your company that don't have PSTN connectivity, they're on an E3 license, but you still talk to them all the time, right? But now you're on Teams Phone Mobile. We found out that broke the connection between the internal company and the external company, because now we're routing through the mobile network and it's acting like a PSTN call in a way to Microsoft, comes back in and broke it. So you can't connect. That's another thing. We had to do some magic in our back end, and I can't talk about what that was, but we had to make that work, right?
That's really interesting. So that's an internal user, non-Teams Phone user, E3 user, trying to call their peer in Teams.
Yep.
But the person expects the call to come through to their cellular native dialer because they're a Teams Phone user, but obviously it sounds like it didn't by default.
Yeah, and vice versa. So being able to have it come in, the other direction. But mainly, you're right. Being able to, on the E3, to be able to reach the Teams Phone mobile user and terminate on the cell phone as expected on the native dialer, that takes some work because most mobile networks don't accept SIP dialing. Right? It's E164. It's an E164 land. So so we made it work on our network, and we support it. That's a big example of those things that are just customizable from a carrier perspective that we've learned along the way.
That's super interesting. And what about kind of from a customer perspective? Where have you seen it fit well? Who's testing it? Big, small use cases, as much as you can share, obviously.
Yeah, really sure. I mean, we've got a lot of customers testing it, from the small end to medium business to enterprise to, in the SLED market. We launched it across the gamut. So we have government customers. We have, we've got education customers, but we also have some enterprises. We have enterprises and medium business. Now, initially, it seems to be the sweet spot is in the kind of the low end of enterprise or medium business. And I think that's only because it takes a lot longer for those large enterprises to make a pivot of this nature. And we have a lot of them trialing it, and a lot of them have said they like it, and they're just trying to figure out what they're doing with their technology stack.
Is it fair? You probably you do see more of these use cases than I do. As you get bigger into bigger organizations, is it a different team that own the mobile conversation and the fixed line VoIP conversation? I definitely see that in the customers I work with.
Absolutely. And I was going to write something about this on post something on LinkedIn. I was going to write an article on this because it is totally a jumble of kind of institutional structure and the way businesses are organized, and they're not built for this mobile integration. There's usually a different department that does mobile and cell phones, and that's still siloed in many respects from the IT, PBX world, the cloud world, everything that's kind of come together for office telephony for most businesses over the last 10, 15 years. But the mobile side is still kind of off in its own land, is what we found in large respects. And that has caused friction, and it's slowed down business decisions. And sometimes it's just completely killed the momentum of the idea, right? Until it's kind of picked up by that other organization and they talk. So it's got to almost be championed by somebody, in that case, internally to make that bridge.
Yeah, I definitely have seen the same thing. And it's really interesting when you're talking to people who are like, this is a fantastic idea, I love it, but it's not my remit, and I can't move that team, and they have a different budget cycle. And we've seen the same thing over the years with obviously UC bringing IT and telephony together, and now UCAS.
Yep.
I think it's the same thing again. I think it will take a while for and also awareness as well. I'm surprised, or maybe not. I was initially surprised at how often I'm having conversations where I'm just having to explain it exists. It's just not very well understood yet as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the size of the organization, as we were saying, they're making decisions, and a lot of them are moving to Microsoft Teams, and they want to move to Microsoft Teams and then deal with this. They're like, okay, let's just get over to Teams, get all of our infrastructure done. everybody's happy, and then we'll tinker with this Teams Phone Mobile thing, right? That's what we're seeing a lot too. Is it's at the back end of the decision process. It's not as integrated because of a lot of those factors. Like, it's the inertia of this is the way things have always worked. We'll deal with it. It's new. It's great. Okay, we kind of like the idea, but let's just we got a plan for what we want to do. We understand how it works, and then we'll do it later, if it makes sense. That's what we hear a lot of. So, and some of those customers after 18 months are coming back. We're seeing them cycle back in now. So it's good.
Yeah, like as you said, like SMB mid-market, I feel like they're typically a more mobile-first market anyway, and the agility is a bit more there. You're not going to have completely different departments that don't talk to each other, responsible for those two areas in a few hundred-seater potentially.
Absolutely. That's right.
That's cool. And what's your thoughts on timelines are hard, but I feel like this is inevitable on some timeline. Do you feel like mobile is going to be moved to a more of a default position at some point in the future?
It's going to take some time, but I feel like it's going to pick up. It's going to pick up a large piece. Okay, so there's just too much sense there for not to. It's I think that. Will it be the primary mode of communication for a large enterprise? Probably not, because of the overall expenses involved. And the breadth and how do you stitch it together with every mobile operator. You have SIP trunking networks worldwide, right? Verizon does. And other companies do. You may have to deal with a couple different providers if you want a worldwide network for a big enterprise, global enterprise. But for this, it's got to be really patchwork together. You got U.S., you got Canada, every country's got its own. It's got to have its own operator, and then you got to go in and figure out, okay, how does it work differently for my end users? So it's another thing that's kind of going to slow it down to some degree from a mass adoption perspective. But within the U.S. and Canada, in North America, I don't know, if Mexico will be a part of that eventually, but U.S. and Canada for sure to start out with. There are a lot of larger companies that have a huge footprint here, and it's going to make more and more sense for them. And that's coming. It really is. It's just it's a journey. It's a journey and I think 5 years is a pretty good bar. Let's look at this in 5 years, and we might probably have 10 times as many users as we have today or more, maybe 20. Because it's going to accelerate. And you were asking about, what kind of customers are starting to really adopt it. And we talked about that a little bit, but I would add one thing to that. And that's, we're seeing a ton of security and compliance, interest. And that is the huge.
Yeah, that's the great point, actually, because that's one of the things we hear as a big selling point is the idea of bringing all your call records and your recording into one system. Is that you've seen that borne out then as kind of a good use case?
It is, and we've got several larger customers already that are adopting it, and it's becoming. I think the word of mouth is getting out there that hey, this makes a lot of sense. Now you have an integrated solution for your voice and your SMS capture and archiving through your Microsoft Teams environment that you're already running and managing. So that story and the ease of it is just going to continue to get better, as with time, and it's already there. So we're already picking up a lot of interest there. So that's definitely something it's an accelerator for that market, for those markets to adopt earlier, for sure.
Awesome. Oh, thanks for taking us into the weeds a little bit. It's great to understand how it works kind of in the background and some of the journey. There'll be a lot of organizations listening all over the world, just not in the US. Any thoughts on how they should think about this? Like, should they be trialing some seats? I guess it depends if their operator supports it. Any sort of thoughts around that?
Around from a customer perspective?
Yeah. I guess it's a new option on the table
Yeah.
to most organizations, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say you should, first of all, every customer already, those we talked about your mobile, the mobile side of your business, you're already managing that kind of through your own organizational structure, probably a little bit separately already. So you're used to having to manage country by country by country already to some degree. But there needs to be an integrated plan organizationally, like we were talking about, to be able to talk to your IT department, your cloud department, your teams management folks, and have an overlay there. Because if not, starting to merge the organizations, just at least have an overlay, a structural, kind of a matrixed approach to how you're going to manage it, and then decide. I would go, what's my most important country? Where do I have most of my mobile users today? And does it match up with the footprint that Microsoft has with their operators, their Teams Phone mobile operators? Because there is still a limited footprint. And I know Microsoft has got a few more operators coming on board here soon. It's still going to be, though, a pretty big patchwork. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I'm in the UK, so we're one of the markets that should be getting 3 big operators, one at the moment, but 2 more coming. We'll have 2. I know there's a second one coming in the US as well at some point. So there are markets starting to have some competition, and historically we've always seen that kind of G's everybody up a little bit because it's now there's 2 different people talking to this, potentially.
Yeah. And that's another point that we've seen as well. So we've had some big customers say, well, what are we going to do? Because in the United States, at least, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but from a mobile perspective, we've got 3 major carriers, just like I think you do. But you have better signals in different areas of the country. I mean, it's just, that's the way it works. And so if you're a big customer, you've got 60,000 lines across the country that are mobile lines. What are you going to do if 20,000 of them are serviced by one and 20,000 another and 20,000 another? Okay. Or, 40 and 15, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
You have to have a plan for that. And so, one of the things we did initially was and you've got the BYOD folks, that's shifting more, but we could talk about that more. We have a plan for that from a Verizon perspective, but in the same time, the customer's like, it just doesn't make sense for us to move all of our users, and we want to have a uniform strategy. So they're waiting. So some of the large customers are just naturally waiting for this to happen. They're waiting.
So that's interesting. So actually, the multiple providers, I've seen a variant of that conversation with the UK customer where they're like, we like the concept, but if we go with this and there's only one provider, we have no negotiation because we're locked into that feature. So not the coverage issue, but in that case, but similar. Once a few people have it, we're more committed to it's a thing. And
they want that too. They want to be able to negotiate against. That's another component for Verizon, and I think for the other carriers in the U.S. at least. This is not about making a ton of money off of this integration, purely this integration. This is about just servicing our customers and getting, and having an attractive offer that locks them, because it's going to lock you in, right? It's if you've got a mobile interconnect that you're happy with within Teams, you're never going to leave. You're never going to leave that provider. It's going to be a lot more difficult for you to be switching providers. So there's a lot of built-in positive attractions there for us from a market perspective. So as far as cost goes, I don't think cost is going to be so much a part of the equation. We want, Verizon has 3 products. We offer direct routing services into Microsoft. We offer trunking into Microsoft, right? SIP trunking, Operator Connect, and then we have the mobile. So we've got all 3. And ultimately, it's going to be, the price is very similar for all 3. And you just choose what makes sense for you. And that's where it's going. And it's close to that already, but that's where it's going.
Awesome. And for customers that want to get started with this is not a I've got 1,000 lines, I have to cut them all over to. If they could start with a handful and
Yes.
see how it works.
We've had, well over 500 pilots, different customers just try a couple lines, and that's and it can be set up in minutes. It's really easy to set up. That's one of the good things. It's not like you have to set up a SIP trunk here. You've got the line of service. We set it up as a feature. You toggle the feature on. It sends the telephone number over to Microsoft Teams. You add it to your end user in the platform, whoever your Teams administrator is, and you're off. You're off.
I think it's got to be worth, I think I like to stay on top of these things, obviously, but I think as a customer, it's good to at least try a couple of lines and understand it for when the CTO or somebody else comes down the business and says, what are we doing about this? What's our strategy? It's great to have, we're trying out here, or we understand it. So the fact you can do it on a per user basis means it's not that big a bet to try a department or try some users, or even just roll it out in IT, so you know how it actually works in the real world.
Yeah, we've had a lot of customers say, "Oh, can we get this free? What's the contract term?" And there is no contract term, and it's a few bucks a month, and so they're like, "Oh, okay, no problem." It's going to cost us $24 a month to trial it over, 10 people or whatever it is, and that's nothing. So from that perspective, it's really easy to enable, disable, pilot, all those things, which is one of our initial things that we launched with that we were very happy about. we made it easy, at least.
Awesome. Well, Harold, thanks so much for diving into that. I appreciate the time. If people want to find out more about Verizon and the TPM offer and everything else, what's the best thing to do? I guess there must be a website landing page for it.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. It's on the VerizonBusiness.com page. You'll find it. But if you search up Verizon Mobile for Microsoft Teams, you will find the product, and it will tell you everything you need to know about it. Of course, then you can reach out to your representative or anyone there, and we'll get you a demo, get you whatever you need to go forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Harold. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Take care.